I think you and I could agree that there is a lot going on in our world today. If you think about just a few of the headlines, you and I can easily become overwhelmed. And you know what? I haven't even brought up what's going on in your world. Think of all of the things that you need to get done or get accomplished, or who needs to meet with you, or what you need to get done off your to-do list, or any number of things, and you and I can all of a sudden become overwhelmed. And sometimes I think about the culture in which we live, including things like this right here. You see, technology was supposed to make things easier. But as I look through Facebook and Instagram and the web and all the news apps and things like that, I come to realize, and have come to realize by experience, that this little thing that was supposed to make my life easier has seemingly made my life that much more complicated. It's as if you and I live in a world that is constantly shouting to us, wanting our time and our attention and even our treasure and our talent. The world wants something from you, and you and I have a decision to make in all of that clamor and that clutter. I love this quote by Oswald Chambers, which kind of talks about that very thing. He says, "A Christian worker has to learn how to be God's man or woman of great worth and excellence in the midst of a multitude of meager and worthless things. Never protest by saying, 'If only I were somewhere else.' All of God's people are ordinary people who have been made extraordinary by the purpose He has given them. Unless we have the right purpose intellectually in our minds and lovingly in our hearts, we will very quickly be diverted from being useful to God." Did you catch what he said? He said a Christian has to learn how to be God's man or woman of great worth and excellence in the midst of a multitude of meager and worthless things. How many times have you and I been sidetracked by worthless things in the world in which we live, and we're distracted from doing what God would have us do? The opposite of worthless things, the things that are of eternal value. And you and I oftentimes are left with the worthless things, the distractions of life. Jesus said in John 10:27, "My sheep hear my voice and follow me." In a world that is filled with voices that are clamoring for your attention, what will you give your attention to? Proverbs 2:2-4 says, "Tune your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. And if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." In the original language, the first word of that verse 2 of Proverbs chapter 2, is tune your ear. You get that? Tune your ear. I once heard a story, it's a true story, about a football game that took place on October the 16th, 1982 at Badger Stadium in Wisconsin. The game was against Wisconsin and Michigan State University, and it was quickly apparent to all those in the stands that day that Michigan State had the greater and far better team that year, because they were winning the game pretty handily. But what was amazing to the commentators and even those in the stands, but especially to the commentators and the people watching on TV, was that even though the score was becoming more and more lopsided and it was a home game for Wisconsin, the Wisconsin fans kept cheering. And they would cheer all together at random times. Even when things happened on the field that didn't really merit cheering, the Wisconsin fans would cheer. Well, one of the commentators finally figured it out. He noticed that throughout the crowd, many people had portable radios and they were listening to a different game. You see, 78 miles away in Madison, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Brewers were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in the 1982 World Series, and the people were responding to that game that was happening at that same moment, and that game, their team was winning. You see, they were tuned into a different frequency. And that's exactly what you and I as believers need to be in the world in which we live. May we be tuned in to a different frequency and be in touch with what God wants us to be doing, where God wants us to be putting our attention and our time and our talent, not on what the world says that deserves our attention, but what He says deserves our attention. Jesus said, "Remember, my sheep hear my voice and follow me." Will you follow Him today?